Frank Sinatra sold 150 million records, won Oscars, and ran the Rat Pack. But his garage told a story his music never did. He owned cars worth millions, gave one away like it was nothing, and somehow ended his life driving the cheapest car on this list. There are 12 forgotten rides that even his biggest fans never heard about. Number 12. The 1930s green Chrysler convertible. So here's something wild. Frank Sinatra's entire career might exist because of a beat-up green Chrysler. Back in the mid-1930s, Frank was just another broke kid from Hoboken, New Jersey. He wanted to sing, but nobody cared. Then a local group called the Four Flashes held auditions, and according to biographer James Kaplan, they picked Frank, but not because of his voice. They picked him because he owned a car. That green Chrysler meant the group could actually get to their shows. No more begging for rides. No more missing gigs. Frank and his Chrysler became a package deal, and that one lucky break opened the door to everything that followed. So the next time you hear My Way playing somewhere, just remember, all of it started because a teenager had a set of car keys in his pocket. But the cars Frank picked after he got famous? Those tell a way crazier story. Number 11. The 1955 Ford Thunderbird. By the early 1950s, Sinatra's career was basically dead. Record sales crashed, his label dropped him, and Hollywood stopped calling. Everyone wrote him off. Then something happened that shocked the whole industry. He won an Academy Award for From Here to Eternity in 1953, signed a new recording deal with Capitol Records, and came roaring back harder than before. His albums shot straight to the top of the charts. Critics who had called him finished were suddenly calling him a genius again. And the car he picked to celebrate? A black Ford Thunderbird. Clean, fast, no flashy paint, no extra chrome. Just a V8 with 193 horsepower and pure confidence. Frank loved this Thunderbird so much that he started buying the same car for friends and girlfriends. Just handing out Thunderbirds like party favors. A cop once pulled him over in it for speeding, and years later, that same T-Bird sold at a Barrett-Jackson auction for over $164,000. That Thunderbird was Frank saying, "I'm back!" But the next car on this list was Frank saying, "I'm on top and I plan to stay there." Number 10. The 1956 Lincoln Continental Mark II. In 1956, the Lincoln Continental Mark II was one of the most expensive cars in America. The price tag sat at $10,000, which was double what a Cadillac cost, and actually more than a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. And Ford lost money on every single one they built, about $1,000 per car. The thing was so over-engineered, with hand-finished details and white glove inspections on every paint job, that it was basically a charity project for the company. Every engine was bench-tested individually before it went into a car. That kind of obsessive perfection matched Sinatra perfectly. He did the same thing with his music, spending hours in the studio getting a single note right. Frank bought one because it matched his personality. No giant tail fins screaming for attention. No chrome dripping off the body. Just quiet, expensive, understated class. While every other celebrity in Hollywood was trying to outflash each other, Sinatra rolled up in a car that whispered instead of shouted. That was the Sinatra brand in a nutshell. You don't need to shout when everyone already knows your name. But wait until you see what he parked next to it. Number 9. The 1958 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. If any car ever screamed Las Vegas in the 1950s, it was this one. Cadillac only built 304 of these in 1958, and each one cost $13,074. For context, you could buy a house in most American cities for that kind of money back then. Frank's Brougham came in burgundy with cream and gray leather inside, and if you opened the glove box, you found a vanity set with 6 shot-sized drinking tumblers and a silver cigarette case built right in. This car was basically a rolling cocktail lounge. Self-leveling air suspension, power everything, cruise control, and electric windows. Features that wouldn't become normal in regular cars for another 30 years. Sinatra was so obsessed with the Brougham that he owned several of them over the years. One of them showed up on screen in the 1960 movie Ocean's 11, alongside the whole Rat Pack. Imagine being so into a car that you put it in your movie. That same Brougham sold at Bonham's auction in 2009 for $122,500. Now you'd think a $13,000 car with drinking glasses in the glove box was as wild as it got. But the next car makes the Brougham look boring. Number 8. The 1942 Chrysler New Yorker convertible. This one sounds simple until you hear the backstory. In 1942, Sinatra's fame was exploding. Young women across America were screaming at his concerts. His face was everywhere, and he was cruising around in a brand new Chrysler New Yorker convertible, grinning from ear to ear in every photo. But what made this car rare had nothing to do with Sinatra. That year, the United States government ordered every car factory in the country to stop making cars and start building tanks, planes, and weapons for World War II. Chrysler only managed to produce about 36,000 cars before the shutdown. So Frank was driving one of the last civilian cars built before the whole auto industry went to war. A 1942 New Yorker later sold at Barrett-Jackson for over $34,000 without any celebrity connection. The man had a gift for picking cars that would become collector gold decades later. And the next one on this list is maybe the rarest car he ever sat in. Number 7. The 1962 Dual Ghia L6.4. Only 26 of these were ever made in the entire world. The Dual Ghia 6.4 was hand-built in Italy by the Ghia Company, the same people who designed the Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. It ran on Chrysler power with a 383 cubic inch V8 pushing 335 horsepower. And the wildest part? You couldn't just buy one. Dual Motors handpicked which celebrities were allowed to own one. They chose you, not the other way around. Frank got one. So did his Rat Pack buddy, Dean Martin. Other owners included Desi Arnaz from I Love Lucy, and even Richard Nixon. But Frank took him a step further. He hired George Barris, the man who built the original 1960s Batmobile, to add backup fuel pumps, extra brake circuits, and all kinds of fail-safe systems. Sinatra wanted to make sure this car would never leave him stranded. Only 17 of these survive today. When R.M. Sotheby's auctioned one in 2013, it went for $362,000. And that's wild. But it's still not the craziest car on this list, because what Frank did on his 54th birthday was something nobody saw coming. Number 6. The 1970 Lamborghini Miura P400S. On December 12, 1969, Frank Sinatra turned 54 years old. And instead of throwing a party, he flew to Italy, walked into the Lamborghini factory at St. Agata Bolognese, and ordered himself a birthday present. But he didn't just point at a car on the floor. He brought a roll of wild boarskin leather with him and told the factory to use it for the interior. He wanted the paint in Arancio Metallico, a bright metallic orange, because orange was his favorite color. He added orange shag carpeting inside and an 8-track stereo player. The factory recorded the order under one word, just Sinatra. No last name needed, no address, just Sinatra. That's how famous this man was. The Lamborghini factory in Italy knew exactly who was getting this car. This was a car that reportedly made him say something along the lines of, "You buy one Italian brand when you want to be somebody, but you buy a Lamborghini when you already are somebody." But then things got strange. After all that trouble, after flying to Italy, after the custom leather and the special paint, Frank gave the Miura away to a girlfriend named Gloria Kent within a couple of years. She traded it in almost immediately for a newer Lamborghini Countach. That Miura sold at auction in 2004 for just $150,000. Today, any Miura goes for north of $900,000. With the Sinatra history, this one could easily top $1 million. He basically gave away $1 million car like it meant nothing. And somehow, the cars coming up next get even harder to explain. Number 5. The 1975 Jaguar XJS. When Frank married his fourth and final wife, Barbara Marx, in 1976, they didn't just exchange rings. They exchanged cars. Barbara gave Frank a British racing green Jaguar XJS, and Frank gave Barbara a Rolls-Royce. But we'll get to that one in a minute. The Jaguar XJS was a grand touring car with a smooth V12 engine under the hood. It wasn't the fastest thing on the road, and it was meant more for long, comfortable highway drives than sharp cornering. But Frank seemed to genuinely enjoy it, and the British racing green paint gave it a classic old-world look that stood out from all the American muscle sitting in his garage. What makes this car interesting is the story behind the gesture. Two people in love, exchanging cars at their wedding instead of toasters and silverware. That's about as Sinatra as it gets. But the car he gave Barbara? That one hits even harder. Number 4. The 1976 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. Frank's wedding gift to Barbara was a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. But not just any Silver Shadow. He had the paint custom mixed to match the exact shade of his own blue eyes. That peacock blue color became a signature. Barbara drove the car for years, and when it was finally auctioned at Christie's in New York in 1997, the windshield still had a parking sticker from the Palm Springs airport. Frank and Barbara flew in and out of there constantly, and the sticker was like a little time capsule of their life together. It sold for $56,350, which seems low, but Rolls-Royces from the 1970s hadn't hit peak collector value yet. With that custom eye-matching paint and the Sinatra love story behind it, this car would bring a much bigger price today. Frank Sinatra, the tough guy, the Vegas king, the man who hung out with mobsters and presidents, picked a car color based on his own eyes to tell his wife he loved her. That's a side of Sinatra that almost nobody talks about. And the next 3 cars, they go from strange to stranger to absolutely unexplainable. Number 3. The 1981 Chrysler Imperial FS Edition. Chrysler actually put Frank Sinatra's initials on a production car, a real car you could buy at a dealership, the FS edition of the Chrysler Imperial. The whole thing was arranged by Lee Iacocca, the legendary auto executive who also happened to be one of Frank's close friends. Iacocca personally asked Frank for permission to use his name, and Frank said yes. The idea was to bring some prestige back to the Chrysler brand by connecting it to the biggest entertainer in America. But the car flopped. The early 1980s Imperial was a downsized Chrysler that couldn't compete with the luxury imports flooding into the market. It looked fine for its time, but it couldn't live up to the weight of the Sinatra name. Still, there was a whole car line that carried his initials on the badge, and almost nobody remembers it. You won't find it in the documentaries. You won't hear about it in tribute concerts. It's one of those weird footnotes sitting between car history and pop culture, and it just got lost. But this next one? This is where things get truly bizarre. Number 2. The late 1980s Buick Reatta. Near the end of his life, Sinatra reportedly kept a Buick Reatta in his collection, and nobody can figure out why. The Reatta was a 2-seat Buick that the company tried to market as a personal luxury car in the late 1980s. It had a touchscreen computer in the dashboard, which was ahead of its time. But it was still a Buick. Not flashy, not fast, not exclusive. Buick made thousands of them, and they were mostly bought by retirees who wanted something comfortable and quiet. For a man who once flew to Italy and ordered a custom Lamborghini with wild boar leather and orange shag carpet, the Reatta makes absolutely 0 sense. It's like finding out James Bond drives a minivan on weekends. There's no story behind it. No famous photo of Frank leaning against one. No auction record with a crazy price tag. Maybe Frank just liked the way it felt on a Sunday drive. Maybe someone gave it to him and he kept it out of kindness. Nobody knows for sure. And that mystery is part of what makes his entire car collection so strange and so fascinating. But the number 1 car on this list? This is the one that breaks everyone's brain. Number 1. The 1985 Chrysler Town & Country Wagon. After the Lamborghini, the Cadillac, the Rolls-Royce, the hand-built Italian exotics, and everything else on this list, Frank Sinatra's very last car was a station wagon. A 1985 Chrysler Town & Country, built on the K-Car platform. The same cheap platform Chrysler used for budget sedans and minivans. No V8 engine, no custom leather, no celebrity hand-picking process. Just a regular family wagon that any school teacher or plumber could have bought off the lot. And Frank drove it around Los Angeles for years. This is reportedly the last car he ever operated before he passed away in May 1998. Nobody has a good explanation for this. Here was a man worth an estimated $200 million, a man who once had the Batmobile builder customize his cars, and he spent his final years behind the wheel of a K-Car wagon. Some people say he simply calmed down with age. Others think it was about loyalty to Chrysler. sticking with the brand that gave him his very first ride back in the 1930s. Maybe after 60 years of flash and fame, a quiet drive to the store in a simple wagon felt like freedom. The car eventually got listed for sale at around $290,000, which almost certainly makes it the most expensive K car in the history of the automobile. A car that cost maybe $12,000 new, now worth nearly $300,000, because Frank Sinatra's hands touched the steering wheel. Frank Sinatra started with a cheap Chrysler that got him his first singing gig. He ended with a cheap Chrysler that got him to the store. And everything between those two cars was 6 decades of fame, scandal, love, and music that changed America forever. 12 cars, 12 chapters, and almost nobody ever talks about any of them. If you want another celebrity car collection that tells a wilder story than this, click the video on screen right now and subscribe so you catch the next one.